My name's Dave Evans. I'm a teacher. I'm nearly 50 years old. And one day out of the blue, there was a note on my doorstep. Can I contact a police officer? It was a detective police officer in Swansea, which I duly did. We were fostering at the time. We had 2 foster children with us. So I thought it must be something to do with telling us some information about the foster children or whatever. But when I spoke to him, he started asking me about my son in particular, my stepson in particular. My stepson's 28 now. He wanted to know if he'd ever worked in Merthyr, what he did for a job, stuff like that. So I answered his questions. And then he said, well, this is to do with a delicate child protection matter. So again, I was thinking, oh, it's got to be something to do with the foster boys that I know we have, you know. So he said, can you come and speak to us? I said, yeah, that's fine. I can come and speak to you. I can come down now if you like. But there was a lot of to in and fro in. They don't like working after 5 o'clock, the CID, to be fair. So I got there at about 10 to 5. They took me into the police station and they started questioning me about illegal activity from my IP address. Now, yes, I've got an IP address. Everybody's got an IP address these days. And there are probably hundreds of people who know my router password. So it's like, well, okay, if there's been illegal activity, that's fine, but it's nothing to do with me, you know. Anyway, they showed me this image of a young lad, probably in his 20s, and they said, we're satisfied that's not you. So I thought, well, yeah, well, I've never been skinny, and I'm not bald, you know, so they started asking me questions about what do you look at on the internet, blah, blah, blah. It was all a bit bizarre, to be honest with you. Anyway, he left the room. He said, I'll be back. He left the room, he came back and he said, we're arresting you. No, he didn't, sorry. No, what he said is, we'd like to come and take your computer equipment from your house. So, nothing to hide. I said, yeah, that's fine, you can come and take what you need. So we met them back at the house. My wife was there with my son. The foster kids were there, and my son's mate from down the road was there. So there was the police officer had acquired another police officer on the way, so there were 2 of them came into my house and demanded all computer equipment. Now they did say you can give it up voluntarily or we'll get a warrant and tear your house apart. So I just said, well, you can take whatever you need. And my God, we had a lot of computer equipment, the Kindles and laptops, MacBooks, phones, the lot, you know, they took everything basically. They took my wife's phone as well. Basically anything that had a camera they wanted. So we started getting a bit of a clue as to what was going on here now. So we duly gave up all the equipment. They took it away. And said I had to get a solicitor and I would be attending under a voluntary agreement on the Friday. So the following day I had to obviously go and speak to my boss. I'm a teacher. I said, look, you know, this has happened. I'm being arrested for something. I'm going to be arrested for something that I didn't do. But so I was given a leave of absence to go and find a solicitor. Appointed a solicitor who met me on the Friday, 10 o'clock in the morning, only to be told that I was going to be arrested. Before I'd even walked into the police station, she told me on the pavement that I was going to be arrested, which was a big shock.
They first told you it was going to be a voluntary interview.
Yeah.
And only outside the police station, they told you then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My solicitor had been in to speak to the police beforehand and they said, oh, we're going to arrest him. So had to take that on the chin. The minute I stepped foot into the police station, I was arrested for inciting a sexual act from a child. Of course, I denied it, but they just said, oh, well, whatever, come on, we talk about it now. So they take you through into the custody suite and you've got to take your belt off and your shoes off and empty your pockets. amazing how much stuff I got in my pockets. You know, hand your wallet over and everything. Basically, they didn't put me in a cell. They put me in a little holding room. It was a tiny little room, but I was never actually put in a cell because the interview room was available, I think. So, you know. Anyway, I'm in the interview room with my solicitor, 2 coppers sat opposite me, and then it starts. And they start interviewing me about something I know absolutely nothing about, but they're adamant that it's me because it's my IP address. I can't begin to explain how stressful that was. It was 2 hours, 2-hour interview, maybe longer, and they were asking me questions I could not answer because I simply didn't know the answer to the questions. You know, some of the questions I could answer truthfully because they would be personal to me. They would ask me, "Do you have an alarm clock in your bedroom?" I was like, "Well, yes." And you start thinking, "Well, yeah, but you have an alarm clock in your bedroom, surely, you know, everybody's got an alarm clock in their bedroom." So they go down this line of question. It becomes clear then, as it's going through, that basically there was a young lady, she was 12 years old, putting herself out there as being older, who was contacting, and I quote, hundreds of men on Skype, and basically doing whatever they asked. But as the interview was going along, I could see that, you know, this is completely wrong. You know, I got nothing. I know nothing about this whatsoever. It was over. It was a historical thing as well. It was like in 2012. It was a historical thing, and it was over a 3-week period over Christmas. Now, every Christmas I've got a house full of people. You know, my mother-in-law comes over, all the kids come back, and you know, we got a house full. And one particular conversation, shall we say, that was had between this young lady and this guy happened at 3 o'clock on Christmas morning.
What?
So yeah, there's a 12-year-old girl at 3 o'clock on Christmas morning on a laptop contacting some guy on Skype and doing stuff. But thankfully that actually helped, because when the interview was over and I was bailed to my parents' house, my wife picked me up from the police station, and when I explained the story, I said, "Look, it was Christmas morning, 3 o'clock, this is supposed to have happened," and she knew immediately then that's certainly not you, you know. So she always supported me through that, Ellen did, bless her, because she knew it was utter nonsense, but of course the police didn't. So I was bailed to my parents' house. I phoned my boss and I said, "Look, you're going to have to suspend me from work." And she said, "Well, I've been told nothing official, you can come in tomorrow if you like." I said, "Well, it's very nice of you, but you're going to have to suspend me, you know, you're going to have a meeting with the governors and I will be suspended from work." So sure enough, it was Friday the 13th of May 2016, I was officially suspended from work. My boss never doubted me either, to be fair to her, but she said, "You know, it is what it is. There's going to have to be an investigation. The investigation will happen, and the outcome will be what the outcome is," which is all she could say, really. So, yeah, it was. So I was out on bail then for. It was going to be at least 6 weeks before they even looked at my computer equipment. I don't think they even looked at half of it, to be honest with you. Why, you know, if they bother taking it just to not look at it, I don't know. But there you go. So yeah, I was out on bail, and it's the worst feeling in the world when I'm bailed to my parents' house. My parents don't really know. I try to tell them the ins and outs, but they don't know whether I've done it or not. You know, it's and my father's an ex-copper as well, which was a bit awkward. I mean, they were fully supportive, but there seemed to be all this element of, "Oh, you've done something silly on the internet, have you?" You know, and it's like, well, no, I haven't. But my dad being a copper, obviously coppers don't make mistakes, do they? So I wasn't allowed home. I couldn't see my son. I couldn't see my stepchildren. I could see my wife, but it's very awkward when you're living in different places. So it was a really, really stressful few months, to be honest with you. You end up in a position where you start doubting yourself. The police are so adamant that, you know, it is definitely your IP address and it's definitely you that we're looking at. And you start questioning yourself, thinking, well, I don't remember doing that. And you rack your brains and you've got that constant knowing feeling in the pit of your stomach. It's like, well, I'm going to go to prison here for something I didn't do, or if I did do it, I really have no knowledge of it. Did I break down? What, you know, is one of those, you know. So, yeah, I was on bail for about 2 months, I'd say. And I phoned the police in the end. My son, who was living with my wife at the time, he plays trombone. He plays for the local orchestra. And they were going on tour to Italy. So he was going to be in Italy, and this was the week before my bail, so there was just my wife left at home. So I phoned the police and said, do you mind if I go home for the week whilst I'm waiting for my bail date, which was July the 13th. And they said, oh yes, we meant to phone you as a matter of courtesy. Tell your wife not to worry, and can I come down to the police station? You don't need a solicitor. So I thought, okay, this is a bit weird. Why don't I need a solicitor? I haven't even answered bail yet. So I went down to the police station anyway. I was taken in and I was NFA'd straight away. No further action, which is fine. But no further action is not satisfactory. I didn't commit this crime. The police have investigated me and said, well, there's no further action, which means that they couldn't actually find the evidence to charge me with anything. So it was, again, a few weeks later, we were all messed up at this point. My life has changed completely since this has happened. We were all messed up anyway. So we thought we'd go on holidays, get away from it all, bought a tent, went up to the Edinburgh Festival. As we're packing the car full of the tent and dog stuff, we've got 2 dogs and things, I have a phone call from the police officer who was dealing with the case, saying that I'm definitely not the person that they were looking for, and there is no case to answer at all, which was good, but still no answers. So we went away on holidays, Edinburgh Festival, enjoyed that. Came back home and we thought, you know, what exactly was going on, you know. Work had been informed. We were fostering at the time, so social services were informed of everything that was going on. The 2 boys we were fostering were taken away at the beginning of the investigation. Haven't seen them since. Weren't even allowed to say goodbye to them. Yeah, so it was bad. So when we got down to the nitty-gritty of exactly why all this happened, it turned out that the police had missed out in the initial stages of the investigation. The police had missed out a dot in a Skype address. So whilst me and this guy had the same name and very similar Skype addresses, mine was different to his by 1 dot. And because they missed that dot out, it led them to my IP address, and it should have been somebody else's completely different IP address. I don't know whether the guy was actually questioned, arrested, or whatever. I know nothing about what's happened since then, but that 1 single dot has ruined my life. Unfortunately, you know when you're NFA'd, you think, oh, it's brilliant, you know, NFA'd, that's fantastic, I can forget about it all now. And that is not the reality of it at all. When you're NFA'd, you're still think you're under suspicion, and the trauma that you've gone through for a considerable amount of time, every waking moment, you are thinking about, my God, I'm going to go to prison here for something I haven't done. it takes its toll. It really does take its toll, and you end up becoming paranoid, and you end up with mental health issues at the end of the day. I was diagnosed with PTSD. I went to see a psychiatrist in London as part of the claim process against the police. I was diagnosed with PTSD. PTSD is a monster. It really messes with your head. I've always been, I thought, a strong person who can deal with things. Stuff happens in life which you deal with. Sometimes it's not nice, but you deal with it. But PTSD is something you can't deal with on your own, and you need specialist help. First port of call, of course, is your GP. Right, I've been diagnosed with PTSD. I've been asked to come and see you. First thing they do is give you drugs. Sertraline was the drug that they gave me. So you're taking these antidepressant pills. I don't like popping pills, but that's what I was told to do, so I did it. After a couple of months on sertraline, you go back to the doctors and they say, well, are the tablets working? And you say, I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel if I wasn't taking the tablets. So you end up in that cycle where I'm taking these tablets. I have no idea whether they're having any effect or not. I'm still feeling very down. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm suffering in work because I can't meet deadlines. I'm thinking about all these different things all of the time. I'm just not the person I used to be. So I stopped taking the tablets and see if I get worse, then obviously the tablets were doing me some good. Unfortunately, in my situation, I started to what they call self-medicate, which is drinking alcohol. It numbs the pain, stops you thinking so much. And as a result of that further issue, my marriage has fallen apart. And now my wife and I are separated. I see my son, I don't see the dog so much. My stepchildren, I haven't heard from them for a while. So yeah, I can honestly say that the effects of the ineptitude of the police to investigate their case thoroughly at the start has actually ruined my life, and I'm in a real mess. I'm hoping that we can, that myself and my wife can get back together again. It's not all doom and gloom. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but at the moment I'm in the darkest place of the tunnel. Social services, that's another story. They were awful. The way they treated us was absolutely terrible. Even my wife was not allowed to pick our own son up from school because she'd be on her own with him in a car. Even though she was allowed to teach her classes unsupervised, she wasn't allowed to pick her own son up from school. The social services were chaotic, to say the least. Absolutely chaotic. Safety plans galore. Is it concocted? It was a mistake. I mean, anyone can make a mistake, I suppose. But when that mistake leads to such a tragic impact on someone's life, you'd think that there'd be fail-safe procedures in place to make sure that they are actually going for the right person here. Now, from what I can gather, I was arrested via email, basically. One police force emailed another police force saying, we've done an investigation, this is the guy you want, go and arrest him. So the police force that received the email, the South Wales Police, as far as I know, made no attempt to actually look at the evidence before coming to arrest me. So if I was in their position and somebody had sent me an email saying you need to go and arrest this guy, what I would say is, right, well, send me all the information through, all the paperwork you've got, we'll look through it and we'll decide if that's right, and then we'll make the arrest. Now, if that happened, hopefully somebody might have noticed, hang about a minute, there's a dot missing in that Skype address.
To me, you see, that not just the dot missing, not noticed, but once they've arrested you, there's this cognitive bias that comes in.
Yep.
Because you are now the suspect.
Yeah.
And once the police believe you are the suspect, nearly everything that they find can be made to look like you are the guilty one.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that what you found happened to you?
Absolutely.
Everything was...
The way they question you when you're in that interview room, when you leave that interview room, you feel like the scum of the earth. You really do. And you think, my God, you know, and then you start questioning yourself, did I really do that? And it messes with your head big time, you know, because you're trying to remember something you didn't even do. And that's hard, you know. And in the end you start convincing yourself, well, you know, perhaps I was drunk, perhaps I don't know, I really don't remember doing that at all. But they are so convinced that it's you, that you start thinking it's you, and then you go to try and convince yourself that it wasn't, which is ridiculous, utterly ridiculous, you know. So yeah, it's hard, and being on bail is the worst thing, because you know they're investigating you, and you know it's going to take a long time, and every living moment you are suffering big time. The annoying thing is, this could have been sorted out within 5 minutes. I have a Skype account. Never got it to work particularly well, never really used it. But if the police had come to my house, opened up my computer and said, right, can you open up Skype? I'd have opened up Skype, and they would have seen what my Skype address was.
They'd also have seen your Skype history.
Yes, quite, yeah. But they never asked to do that. They just said, we're taking them and we'll send it off to the IT forensics guys, and it'll take them weeks to look at it. And it could have been sorted out within 5 minutes. We did take them on in court. Well, it actually didn't get to court. I went to see a solicitor in London, explained the story. There was obviously a case to answer. It was difficult because there were 2 police forces involved. We've successfully sued the police force that made the initial mistake with the missing dot. We actually received £100,000. But the vast majority of that money was for loss of earnings for the foster children. My personal damages were £15,000.
And do you feel that that's where in the scale of what you should have got?
Well, £15,000 is nothing to those 2 months of pure hell, and the anguish that you go through, the anxiety, the fact that I've now got PTSD, which is, you know, I always thought that was something that, you know, soldiers got because of what they saw, you know. It's not. It's nowhere near that. £15,000 is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. You know, it's less than half a year's pay for me. And I went through all that. I'm still going through it now 2 years later, you know. My son was awarded £10,000 for the way it affected him, because obviously it was stressful for him. He was a young teenager at the time. My wife was awarded £10,000, but the person that was going through, facing, you know, going to prison for something he didn't do, it wasn't worth a lot more, really.
And what have you done with that money so far?
That money went to pay off the second mortgage we had on our house. We were stupid and had 2 mortgages, so paid off credit card bills, the mortgages. We spent it all in an evening, basically, but it would mean that our lives would have been a lot more comfortable, not paying out so much every month. But here I am now in a little flat on my own, paying rent.
And what are you looking forward to doing?
I'm looking forward to... I've just bought myself a Harley Davidson motorcycle. I'm nearly 50 years old. Midlife crisis maybe, but I'm in a position where I could get a Harley Davidson motorcycle. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. I have my motorbike test next week on Tuesday, so hopefully I pass. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ride past the police station in Swansea on my Harley with my middle finger held high, shall we say. What are they going to do, arrest me?